The dust swirled around Dr. Elena Vasquez as she carefully brushed dirt away from the strange crystal surface. She had been digging on this dead planet for 3 months now, and this was the biggest find yet. The crystal was smooth and black, unlike anything she had seen before in her 20 years of studying alien ruins. "Marcus, come look at this," she called to her assistant. The young man hurried over, his boots crunching on the dry ground. Planet Kepler 442c was not a pleasant place to work. The air was thin, the ground was hard, and nothing had lived here for thousands of years. Marcus knelt beside her and whistled softly. "That's huge, Dr. Vasquez. How deep does it go?" Elena stood up and wiped sweat from her forehead. Above them, the research ship Prometheus floated in the orange sky, its metal hull gleaming in the alien sun's light. The ship was their home and their lifeline. Without it, they would be stuck on this empty world forever. "I don't know yet," Elena said. "But look at these markings." She pointed to symbols carved into the crystal's surface. "I've never seen anything like them. They're not from any known alien species." The dig site was a mess of tools, screens, and cables. Elena's team had been working here since the Galactic Survey found these ruins. Most alien ruins were boring, just old buildings and broken machines. But this place felt different. The ruins were older and stranger than anything they had found before. Elena activated her scanner and ran it over the crystal surface. The device beeped and showed readings that made her heart race. "Marcus, this crystal is giving off some kind of energy. Very low level, but it's definitely active." "Should we call the ship?" Marcus asked. He looked nervous. Finding active alien technology was always dangerous. Some old machines still worked, and they didn't always work safely. "Not yet," Elena said. "Let's see what else we can find first." They worked for hours, carefully exposing more of the crystal structure. As the sun moved across the sky, they realized they had found something incredible. The crystal wasn't just a piece of old technology, it was enormous. The part they could see was just the top of something much bigger. "Dr. Vasquez," called Sarah, another team member. She was working on the other side of the dig site. "You need to see this." Elena and Marcus ran over to where Sarah was kneeling. She had uncovered another crystal. This one smaller but covered in the same strange symbols. "There's more," Sarah said, pointing around the dig site. "I think we're sitting on top of a whole structure. Something huge, buried under all this dirt and rock." Elena felt excitement building in her chest. This could be the discovery that made her career. But she also felt something else, a strange worry that she couldn't explain. "We need more equipment," she said, "and more people. Marcus, call the ship. Tell Captain Rodriguez we need the heavy diggers down here." The next few days passed quickly. The ship's crew brought down massive machines that could move tons of dirt in minutes. As they dug deeper, the true size of their discovery became clear. They had found a vault, a huge underground chamber made entirely of the black crystal material. The vault was the size of a small city. Its walls were covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to move when Elena looked at them. The crystal gave off a soft blue light that made everything look strange and otherworldly. "The energy readings are getting stronger," reported Dr. Kim, the team's technology expert. "Whatever this place is, it's still powered after all these years." Elena walked through the vault's corridors, her flashlight beam dancing across the crystal walls. The symbols seemed familiar somehow, but she couldn't figure out why. She had studied alien languages her whole career, but these markings were different. "Dr. Vasquez," Marcus called from deeper in the vault. "I found something. A big chamber with some kind of machine in the center?" Elena hurried to where Marcus was standing. The chamber was huge, with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center sat a complex device made of the same black crystal. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What do you think it is?" Marcus asked. "I'm not sure," Elena said. But look at this. She pointed to a section of the machine that was glowing brighter than the rest. The symbols here are different. Newer, maybe. Elena approached the machine carefully. As she got closer, the symbols began to glow brighter. She reached out to touch the crystal surface, ignoring Marcus's worried protests. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, everything changed. The machine hummed to life, and beams of blue light shot out from its surface. The light formed shapes in the air, three-dimensional pictures that moved and changed. "Elena, get back!" Marcus shouted, but she couldn't move. She was frozen in place, watching the light show with wide eyes. The pictures showed things that should have been impossible. She saw planets and stars, spaceships and alien cities. But most shocking of all, she saw Earth. Not the Earth of today, but Earth from long ago, when humans were just learning to make fire and hunt animals. But the humans in the pictures were different. They were stronger, faster, and smarter than the early humans she knew about from her studies. They had technology that shouldn't have existed. They had spaceships. The pictures kept changing, showing more and more impossible things. She saw humans fighting in space battles. She saw them building cities on alien worlds. She saw them doing things that no history book had ever mentioned. Then the pictures stopped, and words appeared in the air. But these weren't alien words. They were written in ancient human languages that had been dead for thousands of years. Elena could read some of them, and what they said made her blood run cold. The children of Earth were not born there, the words said. They were made by hands that knew the secrets of life and death, made to fight a war that would decide the fate of all things. More words appeared, talking about humans as weapons and tools, about a great war that happened long before recorded. History, about enemies that came from beyond the stars to destroy everything. Elena! Marcus grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the machine. "We need to get out of here! Something's wrong!" Elena looked around and realized he was right. The entire vault was glowing now, and the crystal walls were making a low humming sound. The machine had activated something, and she had no idea what it might do. They ran through the vault's corridors as the humming grew louder. Behind them, Elena could hear the machine working, sending signals up through the rock and dirt to the surface. When they reached the entrance, Elena looked back one more time. The vault was blazing with blue light now, and she could feel energy in the air that made her skin tingle. "What have we done?" Marcus asked. Elena didn't answer. She was thinking about the words the machine had shown her, words about humans being made as weapons, words about an ancient war, words about enemies from beyond the stars. As they climbed out of the vault, Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's cold wind. The machine was still working, still sending its signals into space. And somewhere out there, something was receiving those signals. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. The research ship Prometheus hung in the orange sky above them, unaware that everything had just changed. Elena looked up at the stars and wondered what was coming. Whatever it was, she had the terrible feeling that humanity was not ready for it. But ready or not, it was coming. The signals were already racing through space, carrying news of humanity's discovery to places that had been dark and silent for thousands of years. The vault had been opened, the secret was out, and there was no going back. 3 days after Elena touched the crystal machine, something woke up in the dark spaces between stars. The signal from the vault had traveled far and fast, reaching a place where massive ships floated in the cold emptiness of space. These ships were bigger than cities, made of materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They had been waiting in the darkness for thousands of years, their crews in deep sleep, their computers watching and listening for one specific signal. Now that signal had come. On the bridge of the largest ship, a tall figure opened silver eyes, for the first time in millennia. The Primarch was ancient beyond human understanding. its body more machine than flesh after countless centuries of improvements and modifications. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of ages. "The vault has been opened," the Primarch said to the other awakening figures around it. "The humans have found what they should not have found." Another Primarch, this one smaller and more organic in appearance, stepped forward. "How is this possible? We buried the vault so deep on worlds so distant. The humans should never have reached them." "Yet they have," the first Primarch replied. "And now they know, or they will know, once they translate more of the records." The Say. Bridge came alive with activity as more Primarch awakened from their long sleep. Computers that had been running on minimal power for thousands of years suddenly blazed with activity. The great ships began to move, their engines creating ripples in space itself. On Earth, President Chen was having a normal day until the communication came in. She was reviewing trade agreements with the Centauri colonies when her aide burst into the office, his face pale with shock. "Madam President," he said, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not from any human ship or station." President Chen frowned. "Alien contact? Which species? The Thorans? The crystalline beings? From Vega?" "No, ma'am," the aide said quietly. "It's from someone we've never heard of before. Someone calling themselves the Primarch, and they're demanding to speak with Earth's leaders immediately." The transmission was unlike anything human technology had ever received. It came through channels that shouldn't have existed, using methods that human scientists couldn't understand. But the message was clear enough. The Primarch identified themselves as the galaxy's oldest species. They claimed to have been watching and guiding younger civilizations for millions of years, and they were very unhappy about the discovery on Kepler 442c. "The excavation must stop," the Primarch message said in perfect English. "All recovered materials must be destroyed. All personnel involved must undergo memory modification. This is not a request." President Chen stared at the screen where the message had appeared. "Memory modification? They want to erase our people's minds?" "It gets worse, Madam President," the aide said. "They're sending the same message to every government on Earth, and to the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council was humanity's connection to the wider universe. It was made up of representatives from dozens of alien species, and it met on a giant space station called Nexus Prime. The Council had welcomed humans as members only 50 years ago, and the relationship was still sometimes difficult. On Nexus Prime, the alien representatives were in chaos. The Thorans, who looked like giant insects, were clicking their mandibles in agitation. The Vegans, beings of living crystal, were flashing colors that meant confusion and fear. The Aquatic Collective, who needed special tanks to survive in the station's atmosphere, were making sounds that their translators couldn't interpret. "Who are these Primarch?" demanded Ambassador Threx, the Thoran representative. "We have never heard of them." "Perhaps they lie," suggested Crystal Singer Veln of the Vegans. "Perhaps they seek to deceive us." But Ambassador Sarah Martinez, Earth's representative to the Council, was looking at data that made her stomach turn. The signal came from coordinates that show no planets, no stars, nothing at all. But our deep space sensors are picking up massive energy signatures there. Ships, but bigger than anything we've ever seen. The debate was interrupted by another transmission. This time, the Primarch spoke directly to the Council chambers, their words appearing in the air above the central podium. "Members of the Galactic Council," the voice said, "we are the Primarch. We have watched your species develop and grow for longer than your histories record. We have guided you, protected you, and shaped your civilizations from the shadows." The chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea that they had been manipulated by some hidden power was insulting to every species present. "The humans have discovered something that threatens the stability we have maintained for eons," the Primarch continued. "They must stop their investigation immediately or face the consequences." "What consequences?" Ambassador Martinez demanded. The answer came in the form of images that appeared in the chamber's main display. They showed Primarch fleets moving through space, thousands of ships heading toward the inner galaxy. The ships were beautiful and terrible, clearly more advanced than anything the Council species possessed. "We do not wish to use force," the Primarch voice said. "But we will protect the order we have created. The humans will comply, or they will be made to comply." Back on Kepler 442c, Elena and her team were unaware of the political storm their discovery had created. They were too busy trying to understand what they had found. Elena had spent the last 3 days translating more of the crystal records. What she learned made her question everything she thought she knew about human history. According to the records, humans had not evolved naturally on Earth. They had been created, designed by an advanced species to be the perfect warriors. The record spoke of genetic engineering on a scale that seemed impossible, of taking primitive apes and transforming them into something far superior. "This can't be right," Marcus said as Elena showed him her translations. "Humans evolved naturally. We have fossils, genetic evidence, everything proves it." "The records say the evidence was created," Elena replied. "Fake fossils planted in the ground, false genetic markers inserted into our DNA, an entire false history designed to hide the truth." Dr. Kim looked up from his computer. "Dr. Vasquez, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching our position. Big ones. Not human design." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours, maybe less. Elena looked around the dig site. Her team was small, just 12 people. They had some basic weapons for protection against wild animals, but nothing that could fight spaceships. "We need to get as much data as we can before they arrive," she said. "Download everything from the vault. Every symbol, every record, every piece of information." "What if they're friendly?" Sarah asked. Elena thought about the records she had been translating. Records that spoke of humans as weapons that had turned against their creators. Records of a war so terrible that the creators had been forced to exile their creations and wipe their memories. "I don't think they're coming to welcome us," Elena said. High above them, the research ship Prometheus was picking up the approaching vessels on its sensors. Captain Rodriguez was a veteran of several alien conflicts, but he had never seen ships like these. "They're not responding to our hails," reported his communications officer, "and they're not showing any identification signals." "Sir," the weapons officer said quietly, "they're targeting us. Multiple weapon locks." Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would echo through history. Instead of surrendering or trying to flee, he sent a message to Earth and the Galactic Council. A message that contained everything Elena's team had discovered in the vault. "If something happens to us," he transmitted, "the galaxy needs to know the truth." The first Primarch ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, just as the message finished sending. They were beautiful, elegant vessels that seemed to bend light around them. But their beauty couldn't hide their deadly purpose. Elena watched from the surface as lights appeared in the sky above. Not the warm yellow of human ships or the blue glow of Thoran vessels, but a cold silver light that seemed to make the air itself feel heavy. "They're here," she whispered. The Primarch had awakened. They were coming to reclaim their creations, to restore the order they had maintained for so long. They had the power to reshape worlds and rewrite history itself. But they had made one mistake. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the refusal to give up, even when facing impossible odds. Elena looked at the vault entrance, then at her team. These people had trusted her to lead them, and she wouldn't let them down. Whatever was coming, whatever the Primarch wanted, she would not simply surrender. The secret was out. The truth about humanity's origins was spreading across the galaxy, carried by Captain Rodriguez's message. And once a secret like this was free, it could never be contained again. In the silver ships above, the Primarch were learning this lesson. But it might already be too late. The Primarch ships descended through the orange sky like falling stars. Elena watched them land around the dig site, their silver hulls gleaming in the alien sunlight. Each ship was beautiful in a way that made her eyes hurt, as if they were too perfect for human perception. Figures emerged from the ships, tall and graceful beings that seemed to glide rather than walk. The Primarch wore flowing robes that changed color as they moved, and their faces were hidden behind masks of polished metal. When they spoke, their voices seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," one of them said, somehow knowing her name without introduction. "You have opened something that should have remained sealed forever." Elena stood her ground, though her heart was racing. Behind her, Marcus and the rest of her team huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Above them, the research ship Prometheus hung motionless in the sky, surrounded by more Primarch vessels. "We're scientists," Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "We study the past to understand the present. If you didn't want this found, you should have hidden it better." The lead Primarch tilted its head in what might have been amusement. "Hidden it better? Child, we buried these vaults beneath miles of rock on dead worlds at the edge of the galaxy. We never imagined your species would spread so far, so fast." "Our species?" Elena asked. "You talk about humans like you know us personally." "We do know you," the Primarch replied. "We made you." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Elena had read this in the vault records, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that terrified her. "That's impossible," Marcus said from behind her. "Humans evolved naturally on Earth. We have millions of years of evolutionary history." The Primarch gestured, and images appeared in the air around them. Not the blue holographic projections from the vault, but something more real, more solid. Elena felt as if she was looking through a window into the distant past. 60,000 years ago, your species was dying, the Primarch said. Ice covered most of your world. Your ancestors were scattered tribes of primitive hunters, barely, surviving in caves and crude shelters. Within a few thousand years, they would have been extinct. The images showed early humans struggling against cold and hunger, their numbers dwindling as the ice sheets spread. "We had need of warriors," the Primarch continued. "Our ancient enemies were stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies. We needed soldiers who could think and adapt, who could fight without surrender, who would never give up no matter the odds." The images changed, showing Primarch ships descending to prehistoric Earth. Elena watched in horror as her ancestors were, taken from their caves and villages, brought aboard the silver vessels for purposes she was only beginning to understand. "You experimented on them," Elena whispered. "We improved them," the Primarch corrected, "enhanced their intelligence, their physical capabilities, their survival instincts. We gave them the ability to learn and adapt faster than any natural evolution could accomplish." The images showed laboratories where primitive humans were changed, their bodies and minds upgraded with technology beyond current understanding. Elena saw her ancestors emerging from treatment chambers, standing taller, moving faster, their eyes bright with new intelligence. But something went wrong, Elena said. She had read enough of the vault records to know how this story continued. "Nothing went wrong," the Primarch said. And for the first time, Elena heard emotion in its voice. "Everything went exactly as we designed it. You were perfect warriors. Too perfect." The images shifted again, showing humans among the stars. But these weren't. The struggling colonists Elena knew from history. These humans commanded fleets of advanced ships, conquered worlds, and fought battles against enemies that defied description. "You served us well for 1,000 years, the Primarch said. "You fought our wars, destroyed our enemies, expanded our territory across 100 star systems. But then you began to ask questions." Elena watched as the images showed human leaders meeting in secret, their faces grim with determination. She couldn't understand their ancient language, but their body language was clear enough. They were planning something, Questions like what? Marcus asked. Questions like why we remained hidden while they fought and died, the Primarch replied. Questions like why they should serve us instead of ruling themselves. Questions like whether they were slaves or soldiers. The next images were harder to watch. They showed battles between humans and Primarch, fought with weapons that turned planets into glass and tore holes in space itself. Elena saw human ships attacking Primarch strongholds and Primarch forces trying desperately to contain the rebellion they had created. The war lasted 300 years, the Primarch said quietly. In the end, we won only because we were willing to do something you were not. We destroyed entire worlds to stop you. Elena felt sick. The images showed planets burning, human, colonies being wiped out by weapons too terrible to comprehend, millions of her ancestors dying because they had dared to seek freedom. Why didn't you just destroy us all? She asked. Because we still needed you, the Primarch admitted. Our ancient enemies were still out there, still threatening. We knew that someday we would need warriors like you again. So we made a different choice. The final images showed the last human fleets being herded toward a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Elena recognized it immediately. Earth, but younger, wilder, covered in ice and snow. We exiled you to your birth world and wiped your memories, the Primarch said. We gave you a false history, false archaeological evidence, false genetic markers. We made you believe you had evolved naturally, that you were just another primitive species learning to use tools and fire. Elena stared at the images of early humans being released on Earth, their enhanced abilities suppressed, their memories of the stars erased. They looked confused and lost, like children abandoned by their parents. For 60,000 years, we watched you slowly rediscover what you had lost. The Primarch continued. We guided you carefully, making sure you developed along predictable paths. We thought we could control your growth, limit your expansion, keep you contained. But we spread anyway, Elena said, understanding beginning to dawn. We reached the stars again. We found your vault. Yes, the Primarch said. And now our ancient enemies have returned. We can see their ships at the galaxy's edge, just as we predicted. We need you to fight them again, but this time we hope to avoid the complications of the past. Elena felt anger building in her chest. Complications? You mean our desire for freedom? Your refusal to accept necessary limitations, the Primarch corrected. Your inability to understand your proper place in the order of things. Our proper place? Marcus stepped forward, his fear replaced by indignation. You created us to be slaves. We created you to serve a purpose greater than yourselves, the Primarch replied. The enemies that are coming will consume everything. If they are not stopped, your entire galaxy will become nothing but food for their hunger. Elena looked around the dig site, thinking about everything she had learned. The truth about humanity's origins was terrible and wonderful at the same time. Terrible because it meant they were tools created by others. Wonderful because it meant they were capable of so much more than anyone had ever imagined. Show us, she said suddenly. Show you what? Show us these enemies. Show us what's coming. The Primarch hesitated, then gestured again. The images that appeared made Elena's previous. Fear seemed like mild concern. She saw ships that looked like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. She saw worlds being consumed, their matter converted into more ships, more creatures, more hunger. The Devourers, the Primarch said. They come from beyond our galaxy, consuming everything in their path. They have already destroyed 6 galaxies, turning their matter into more of themselves. Nothing stops them. Nothing turns them aside. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They can only be fought. Elena watched the images of vast fleets of organic ships sweeping across star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind. Them. The scale of destruction was beyond imagination. "When will they arrive?" she asked. "Their advanced scouts are already here," the Primarch said. "The main fleets will arrive within months, and when they do, every living thing in this galaxy will face extinction unless they are stopped." Elena looked at her team, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. The Primarch had created humanity to fight these things, had exiled them when they proved too independent, and now they wanted their weapons back. "What if we refuse?" she asked. "Then everything dies," the Primarch said simply, "including your precious freedom." Elena thought about the choice before them. Serve their creators as weapons and lose their independence, or maintain their freedom and watch the galaxy burn. It seemed like an impossible decision, but as she looked at the images of the approaching devourers, Elena began to realize something. The Primarch were thinking about this all wrong. They saw only two choices, slavery or extinction. Elena saw a third option, one that her creators, for all their wisdom and power, seemed unable to imagine. The question wasn't whether humanity would fight. They would fight because that's what they did. The question was whether they would fight as slaves or as free people choosing their own destiny. The attack came without warning, just as Elena and her team were being transported to Earth for further discussions with the Primarch. The Devourer scout ships emerged from the darkness between stars like nightmares given form. They're organic, hulls pulsing with alien life. Admiral Chen Zhao was aboard the flagship Defiance when the first reports came in. The outer colonies of the Centauri system had simply vanished from all communication networks. No distress calls, no emergency signals, just sudden, complete silence. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving automated beacons from the Proxima mining stations. The messages are strange." Admiral Zhao frowned. He was a veteran of 3 wars and had seen almost everything the galaxy could throw at humanity. But the tone in Torres's voice suggested something beyond his experience. "Let me hear it," he ordered. The message that played over the bridge speakers made every person present feel cold dread. It wasn't words, but sounds. Wet, organic noises, like something very large chewing. In the background, they could hear what might have been screaming, but it was impossible to tell if the sounds came from humans or something else. "How old is this message?" Admiral Zhao asked quietly. "Transmitted 4 hours ago, sir. But according to the beacon data, the mining stations have been offline for 3 days. Admiral Zhao felt ice form in his stomach. The math was simple and terrible. If the stations had been attacked 3 days ago, but the automated systems had only started transmitting these sounds 4 hours ago, it meant something had been using the stations for 3 days before activating the beacons. Something that wanted others to hear what it was doing. "Set course for Proxima," Admiral Zhao ordered. "Maximum speed, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we may have a situation." The Defiance and her escort ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, racing toward the outer colonies. But they were already too late to save anyone. They were only in time to witness horror on a scale that would haunt Admiral Zhao for the rest of his life. The Proxima system was still there, but it was wrong in ways that hurt to look at. The planets remained in their orbits, but their surfaces had changed. What had once been brown and gray rock was now covered in a thick, pulsing membrane that seemed to breathe. "Sir," whispered the sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive biological activity on all the planets, and there are ships, but they're not like any ships I've ever seen." The Devourer vessels floated among the transformed planets like jellyfish in a dark ocean. Their translucent hulls showed internal organs working, processing the matter they had consumed. As Admiral Zhao watched, one of the ships extended feeding tubes toward the nearest planet, drawing up streams of converted matter to fuel its growth. "Dear God," someone whispered. "Sir, they've detected us," Torres reported. "The biological ships are moving to intercept." Admiral Zhao had faced many enemies in his career, but he had always been able to understand their motivations. Territory, resources, ideology, these were things he could work with, fight against, or negotiate around. But looking at the Devourer ships, he realized he was facing something completely alien. These things didn't want territory or resources in any way he could understand. They wanted to consume everything and turn it into more of themselves. There would be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Zhao ordered. "Prepare for engagement." The battle was unlike anything in recorded military history. Human weapons that could destroy planets barely scratched the Devourer ships. Worse, the aliens seemed to learn from each attack. Energy weapons that worked in the first few minutes became useless as the creatures adapted their defenses. "Sir, they're changing!" the weapons officer called out. "Their hull composition is shifting to absorb our laser fire!" Admiral Zhao watched in growing horror as the enemy ships literally evolved during battle. Within minutes, they had developed new types of weapons, new defensive systems, new ways of moving through space. It was like fighting an opponent who became stronger with every exchange. "All ships fall back," Admiral Zhao ordered. "We need to regroup and report this to command." But the Devourers weren't finished with them. As the human ships tried to retreat, the organic vessels released clouds of smaller creatures, living weapons that moved like schools of fish through space. These creatures attached themselves to the human ships and began eating through the hulls. The escort ship Courage was consumed in minutes, its hull dissolving as hundreds of small creatures burrowed through the metal. Admiral Zhao watched his people die, knowing there was nothing he could do to save them. "Jump now!" he ordered. "Emergency FTL, any direction!" The surviving ships escaped, but barely, and they carried with them news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. On Earth, President Chen received Admiral Zhao's report with growing alarm. The attack on Proxima was just the beginning. Within hours, more colonies went silent. The Devourers were spreading through the outer systems like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Emergency sessions were called on every inhabited world. The Galactic Council met in continuous session, trying to coordinate a response to a threat none of them had ever imagined. But while politicians argued and military leaders planned, something unexpected was happening to the humans who had been exposed to the truth about their origins. Elena felt it first during her transport to Earth. She was sitting in the Primarch ship when pain suddenly shot through her skull. For a moment, she thought they were doing something to her mind, trying to control her thoughts. But then the pain faded, and Elena realized her vision had become sharper. She could see details in the ship's construction that had been invisible before. She could hear conversations from other parts of the vessel that should have been too quiet to detect. "Marcus," she whispered to her assistant, "do you feel strange?" Marcus looked at her with eyes that seemed brighter than before. "I feel more," he said quietly. "Like I've been seeing the world through fog my whole life, and now it's cleared." Dr. Kim was having similar experiences. Her understanding of the Primarch, technology around her was growing by the minute. Systems that had seemed impossibly advanced were beginning to make sense. She found herself seeing patterns and connections that had been hidden before. It's the knowledge, Elena realized. Learning the truth about our origins is triggering, something in our DNA, something they built into us long ago. The Primarch had noticed the changes, too. Elena could see them watching her team with what looked like concern, mixed with satisfaction. "The awakening has begun," one of them said to another. "Their dormant capabilities are activating." "Is it safe?" the second Primarch asked. "Safe for whom?" the first replied. "Safe for them? Probably. Safe for us? That remains to be seen. Elena." understood what they meant. The genetic modifications that had made humans into perfect warriors were reasserting themselves. But this time, there were no Primarch scientists to control the process, no careful programming to ensure loyalty. This time, humanity was awakening on their own terms. The changes weren't limited to Elena's team. Across human space, people who had learned about their true origins were experiencing similar transformations. Their reflexes became faster, their minds sharper, their bodies stronger. They began to understand technologies that had seemed beyond human comprehension. Admiral Zhao felt it too when he returned to Earth. The military briefings about devourer capabilities made perfect sense to him now. He could see weaknesses in their tactics that other officers missed, strategies that could work against an adaptive enemy. The key is unpredictability, he explained to the Joint Chiefs. They adapt to whatever we throw at them, but adaptation takes time. If we keep changing our approach, keep using new tactics before they can adjust, we might be able to stay ahead of them. General Morrison, an old friend and colleague, looked at Admiral Zhao with concern. Chen, are you feeling all right? You look different. Admiral Zhao caught his reflection in the conference room window and understood what Morrison meant. His eyes were brighter, more alert. His posture was straighter, more confident. He looked like a predator that had just remembered how to hunt. I feel more like myself than I ever have, Admiral Zhao said honestly. The Primarch were not pleased with these developments. They had hoped to control humanity's reawakening, to guide the process carefully and ensure loyalty. Instead, they found themselves dealing with humans who were becoming everything they had once been, and more. They are becoming too powerful, one Primarch leader said to another during a private meeting. Too independent. History is repeating itself. Perhaps, the other replied, but what choice do we have? The devourers must be stopped, and only awakened humans have any chance of stopping them. And what happens after the devourers are defeated? Do we face another rebellion? Another war with our own creations? The question hung in the air without answer. The Primarch had created humanity to be the perfect weapons, but they had never solved the fundamental problem. Perfect weapons eventually stopped taking orders. Meanwhile, the Devourer advance continued. More systems fell silent every day. The organic ships were adapting not just to human weapons, but to the weapons of every species they encountered. They were becoming stronger, smarter. The main Devourer fleet arrived like a storm of living nightmares. Elena watched from the bridge of the newly constructed command ship Unity as thousands of organic vessels emerged from the dark space between galaxies. Each ship was the size of a moon, their translucent hulls revealing internal organs that pulsed with alien life. Final count is coming in, reported Commander Torres. Estimate 12,000 capital ships with support vessels numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Elena nodded grimly. In the 6 months since the Vanguard attacks began, humanity had managed to awaken nearly 10 million people. Their enhanced abilities had spread through the population like wildfire, triggered by knowledge of their true origins. But even with their new capabilities, humanity numbered in the billions, not the trillions needed to match this fleet ship for ship. What's the status of the Galactic Alliance? Elena asked. Mixed, Admiral Zhao replied from his position at the tactical station. His own awakening had progressed further than most, his strategic thinking enhanced to levels that sometimes frightened even him. The Thorans and Vegans have committed their full fleets. The Aquatic Collective is providing logistical support, but the hegemony species are still hesitating. Elena wasn't surprised. The hegemony was a collection of older, more conservative species who had always viewed humanity with suspicion. Learning about human origins had only made that suspicion worse. Many of them now saw humans as dangerous weapons that might turn against them once the Devourers were dealt with. "Sir," called Lieutenant Park from communications, We're receiving a transmission from the Primarch flagship. They want to speak with you. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The Primarch had spent the last months trying to control humanity's awakening, offering technology and guidance in exchange for accepting their leadership. Elena had refused every offer, insisting that humanity would fight as equals or not at all. "Put them through," she said. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the Primarch command vessel. The ancient beings stood in formation, their metallic masks reflecting the light from their instruments. When they spoke, their voice carried across space with perfect clarity. "Elena Vasquez," they said, "the time for negotiation has ended. Our deep space sensors show the main Devourer fleet will reach the inner systems within days. You must activate the network now, while there is still time." Elena had learned about the network weeks ago, when the Primarch finally revealed their ultimate defense plan. Hidden throughout the galaxy were massive installations, built millions of years ago during their first war with the Devourers. When activated, the network could create an energy barrier that would trap the organic ships, preventing them from adapting or escaping. But the network required a specific type of consciousness to operate, the enhanced human mind, awakened and connected to the galactic defense grid. Once linked, humans would become living weapons on an unprecedented scale. Their individual identities merged into a collective intelligence designed for war. "I've told you before," Elena said calmly, "humanity will not become slaves again, not even to save the galaxy." "You speak of slavery," the Primarch replied, "but what of the slavery that awaits if the Devourers win? They will consume every living thing, turn all matter into extensions of their hunger. Is that not a worse fate than serving a purpose greater than yourself?" Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. Marcus was at the science station, his enhanced intellect allowing him to process data faster than any computer. Sarah was coordinating with fleet commanders across the galaxy, her awakened empathy letting her understand the needs and fears of dozens of alien species. Dr. Kim was monitoring the Devourer fleet, her improved senses detecting patterns in their movement that others couldn't see. These people had chosen to be here. They had chosen to fight, not because they were programmed to, but because it was right. "There's a third option," Elena said to the Primarch. "One you've never considered because you've never understood what humanity really is." "Explain." Elena gestured to the tactical display, where the positions of Allied fleets were marked in blue against the red mass of the Devourer armada. "You created us to be weapons, thinking that was what defined us. But you were wrong. What defines humanity isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to choose." She paused, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of everything. "We'll activate your network," Elena said, "but not as slaves or weapons, as free people choosing to protect what we love. And we'll do it our way." The Primarch were silent for a long moment. Finally, they spoke again, their voice carrying what might have been surprise. "Your way? The network requires awakened human consciousness to function," Elena explained, "but it doesn't require those consciousness to be enslaved. We can maintain our individual identities while linking temporarily to operate the system. Instead of becoming weapons, we become conductors, guiding the network's power while remaining ourselves." "Impossible," the Primarch said immediately. The network was designed to be operated by a unified intelligence. Individual consciousness would create chaos, interference, failure. Elena smiled, remembering something she had learned from her enhanced empathy. "You designed it that way because that's how you think, in hierarchies, in command structures, in orderly lines of authority. But humans don't work that way. We work in groups, in teams, in chosen families. We can coordinate without losing ourselves." "Admiral," Zhao stepped forward. "Dr. Vasquez is right. In our military exercises with awakened personnel, we've seen something remarkable. Instead of creating a rigid command structure, awakened humans form what we call tactical networks, flexible, responsive groups that can adapt instantly to changing conditions while maintaining individual initiative. Elena nodded. We'll link to your network, but as a team, each person maintaining their own identity while contributing to the whole. It's messy, chaotic, and probably not what you intended. But it's human. The Primarch conferred among themselves in their ancient language. Elena's enhanced hearing let her catch fragments of their conversation. Words about risk and uncertainty, about the dangers of allowing weapons to remain independent. Finally, they turned back to the screen. Very well, they said. But understand the consequences. If your approach fails, if the network cannot function with divided consciousness, everything dies. Every living being in this galaxy becomes food for the devourers. We understand, Elena said, but we'd rather die free than live as slaves. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Across the galaxy, awakened humans received the call to link with the network installations. They came willingly, knowing the risks, understanding that they might not survive the process. Elena found herself at the primary network node, deep beneath the surface of an ancient moon. The chamber was vast, filled with crystalline structures that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center sat a chair that looked disturbingly like a throne, clearly designed for a single consciousness to control everything. This isn't going to work, Elena muttered, then raised her voice. Marcus, can you modify the interface? We need connection points for multiple users. Marcus was already examining the alien technology with his enhanced understanding. Give me 10 minutes, he said confidently. While Marcus worked, Elena felt the presence of other awakened humans linking to network nodes throughout the galaxy. Instead of the cold, unified intelligence the Primarch expected, she sensed something, warm and chaotic. Thousands of individual minds touching briefly, sharing information, coordinating without losing themselves. It's beautiful, Sarah whispered from her position at another modified interface. I can feel them all, not as a collective, but as individuals choosing to work together. The Devourer fleet entered the inner galaxy just as the network came online. Elena felt the massive defense installations awakening across dozens of star systems, their ancient power flowing through the awakened human consciousness that guided them. But instead of the rigid military precision the Primarch had intended, the network operated with human creativity and adaptability. When the Devourers tried to adapt to one type of energy barrier, human operators switched to different approaches. When the organic ships attempted to evolve new defenses, human tactical thinking stayed one step ahead. The battle raged for hours. Elena lost track of time as she and thousands of other humans fought not just with weapons, but with their minds. They turned the network into something it had never been designed to be. Not a tool of domination, but an instrument of cooperation. The turning point came when Dr. Kim discovered something the Primarch had missed. The Devourers weren't just adapting to the network's attacks. They were trying to absorb and understand the consciousness controlling it. But human consciousness, chaotic and individual as it was, proved impossible for them to digest. They can't process us, Dr. Kim reported excitedly. Our thoughts are too random, too individual. They're designed to consume unified intelligence. But we're giving them thousands of different perspectives at once. It's making them sick. Elena felt a moment of fierce joy. Humanity's greatest weakness, according to the Primarch, was turning out to be their greatest strength. Their refusal to think alike, to march in step, to surrender their